January 19th, I said it today. After I beat this boy, let's see what they do next. I bet you Devin Haney's gonna go up to 147 and say that they're a 3-time world champion. I bet you Terence Crawford either gonna go to 154 and drop all his belts at 147. Let's see if they do this.
Welcome to BodyWork. Welcome back. It's Michael Rogers. Welcome to BodyWork Boxing. I think I'm on to something. I've been looking at this little thing going on between Keyshawn Davis and Teofimo Lopez. And at first I was all in the, tizzy because boxing purists wise, I was looking at it like, well, Teo could play that card that, well, what have you done? And I've done this and I've done that. And as time went on, I started saying, if Teo is in a rebuilding phase, it wouldn't be a bad idea for him to fight Keyshawn. Now, my other concerns with Keyshawn, I'll get into that. But what I'm starting to see is that Keyshawn Davis is actually stalking Teofimo Lopez. Why you say that, Mike? If you listen, I'm gonna tell you, right? Relax. Listen, I've started looking at the matchups coming up, and Teofimo Lopez is getting ready to fight a guy named Steve Claggett. Unfortunately, it was no surprise to me. It was just a surprise that it was going to be Steve Claggett. Why you say that? Because Teofimo strategically picked somebody that was in the top 15. Steve Claggett. His name was popping in several different rankings. Name was popping up in the rankings. And typically when you saying you're going down a list and you don't have any mandatories, or you don't have this or you don't have that, and you're going down a list, you can legitimize picking somebody in that top 15. A lot of people like Shakur, he tried to go from top to bottom one time, and a lot of people was like, not right now. But I digress. And I started looking at Keyshawn. I was like, well, I do expect Keyshawn to be calling out some of the other guys. I'll be wanting them to have the smoke. But then I started getting into promotional companies. Because a lot of people tend to leave all of that out when they tend to start talking about these pretty much fantasy fights or cross-promotional fights when the money doesn't dictate that the fights can happen. So I started thinking about it promotional-wise, and I started saying, Keyshawn Davis would be a very good dance partner for Teofimo Lopez. And I believe that they have a plan with them guys coming down to a crash collision. And ever since that pre-fight ordeal when Teofimo had that breakdown after fighting Jermaine Ortiz and him and Keyshawn Davis was on stage going back and forth, it's almost like Keyshawn Davis has an obsession. And you know what? For a young gunner, I like it. I like it in that aspect. It's like I could give Keyshawn Davis all the credit in the world because he's actually chasing a name. Somebody to where if he get that pelt on the wall, that could be his, especially how he do it. Why? Because I'm going to talk about the elephant in the room. Teofimo Lopez is actually chasing Terence Bud Crawford. It sounds a little less realistic the more and more you think about it, since Bud is getting ready to make his appearance at 154. But had it been at 147, it'd have been right in line with something that a guy like Teofimo Lopez, given his track record, would have done. Because he fought Lomachenko when everybody perceived that he was the man. Josh Taylor when everybody perceived that he was the man. Like, it was a little after, but still Josh Taylor. So when you're going 135, 140, for him to get up and get Bud, that would have been acceptable. Bud was like, nah, you know what I'm saying? Kick rocks. I got bigger and better things I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get Canelo, but right now I got to handle this business. But guess what? Keyshawn is the young pup. And I'm like, what better way? Why? Because the elephant in the room is Keyshawn Davis is showing flashes of Bud. We know Bud switch hits and all that, but as far as that that relentlessness, that dog, that, you know, that having those long arms and that athleticism, under, over, the combinations, punching with you when you don't see it coming, moving you and doing things like that. He's looking like one of Bud's proteges. You know, that's probably one of the closest styles I've seen. There's some glimpses in some other fighters that I see it in, but Keyshawn Davis is probably the one that resembles it the most. And I'm thinking Teo. Keyshawn Davis, Olympian, you know what I'm saying, silver medalist. Teofimo Lopez, he just quite didn't make it, but he was right there. He was supposed to go. He tell this story. If you're a Teofimo Lopez fan, you know the story. You already know about it. You know, I try to not get into the things that Teofimo Lopez say outside of the ring that don't pertain to boxing, because he does send a lot of mixed signals. But after the performance against Jermaine Ortiz, when he had somewhat of a breakdown and said something to some of the fans, you know, one of the ones that kind of turned me off. When he said that, he kind of ruffled a lot of feathers, and he kind of went out of sight, out of mind. And so now that he's coming back, I was thinking, he had that breakdown because he was saying that Jermaine Ortiz didn't come to fight. He ran, he this and that. And regardless how you think that they scored that fight, that was a very close fight, and that fight could have went either way. You know, a lot of people like myself thought that Jermaine Ortiz really won, but for political reasons, they couldn't allow that. Because think about it, we haven't heard from Jermaine Ortiz, you know, since then, and he put up a very valiant effort. Wasn't the fight that Teofimo wants somebody where you don't really want to, you don't need a GPS to find him. You know, when you're talking about those taller, rangier guys, those classical, you know, classical style, more boxing purist type guys, give him a lot of problems. You know, so he's looking for somebody like that. And I'm like, well, I thought Subriel Matias would have been, you don't need a GPS for Subriel Matias. You don't need it. So I thought that would be a good fight. But I'm thinking that Keyshawn Davis knows the implication of wanting to fight Teofimo Lopez, which would mean that he would have to move up. So that would be his declaration at 140 to go after that guy. They on the same promotional companies. They got the history of the soundbite while T.O. was they were reading books and that exchange, and Keyshawn's been stalking him, but guess what? He also has the same kind of style that's going to stand in the pocket with you. He'll move if he have to, but he'll stand in the pocket and trade with you. That's right up Teofimo Lopez's alley. And the more and more I start to see it, I know it's going to get, you know, it's going to become swollen, but when I start looking at it from a whole different perspective, when I start breaking down the X's and the O's, I start saying, well, this guy, Miguel McDueno, that Keyshawn Davis fighting, actually has a better resume than Steve Claggett. Ironically, when they fought, Steve Claggett pretty much put hands and feet on the man. Very wide scorecards. 10 rounders. Steve Claggett hasn't fought a 10 rounder. Miguel McDueno has shared the ring with a bunch of names. You know what I'm saying? Some notable names. You know, he's been in there and he's been matched pretty tough. And he has a pretty good record. I think he's like 20, what is he? 25, 31-2, 25 knockouts. So when I look at it, I'm like, Steve Claggett, what, 31-7-2, 7 losses? But he was able to beat this guy, Miguel McDueno. But you also have Keyshawn, who's building his resume based on names. He got Yigit, he got Pedraza, so he actually has some names. Very short career, like 10 fights, but very short career, but it's looking like he's stalking T.O. And if he can go out there and be devastating against this guy, Miguel McDueno, especially if he stop him, because that's what I'm starting to look for. It's like, yeah, you can outbox, you can dominate, you can beat, but when you go out there and put somebody in park, which means that you figured your opponent out and you ended the contest. That means you took it into your own hands. Now we're starting to see more and more when it goes into the judge's hands. It's starting to be more and more political because a lot of people are thinking with their feelings and emotions and not what their eyes actually see in these fights. But as we see these fights go to the scorecards, starting to get some questionable decisions, some robberies, some pickpockets, some things like that. I think that a fight between Teofimo Lopez and Keyshawn Davis would not go the distance. It would not go the distance. By about the 4th round, they will be scrapping. And somebody will get knocked out. But I believe the young pump is very heavy on the heels of Teofimo Lopez, and I think Teofimo Lopez might want to go ahead and take on the challenge, because if you can spark that young man or really show that he ain't really, you know what I'm saying, who everybody is claiming him to be, and you can send a message to Big Bro, maybe Big Bro might meet you. Who knows? We know, I believe that both of these guys are really chasing legacy. You know, Teofimo Lopez already has one. It's just one of those things where he fights to the level of his competition. So whether he would get up for Keyshawn Davis, I don't think it'd have to be a matter of choice, because Keyshawn Davis is going to try to go in there and make a statement. Why? Because he wants to use Teo to catapult himself and raise his trajectory. He has a plan. I think if you look at the names and how they're building Keyshawn, it's the same way they did Teofimo Lopez. The same exact way. And people got to think, even though one person gets credit for undisputed, Teofimo Lopez did everything that boxer did before that boxer did it to establish himself at 35, beat Josh Taylor at 40. So what's your thoughts? What's your comments on this? I think this is this is going to come to a head, and this fight is going to happen, I believe. And I think it's going to be sooner as opposed to later. But we'll see, because Teofimo Lopez got Steve Claggett problems, who pretty much let his hands go. But he's going to be right there for Teofimo to counter and hit with uppercuts and all that, because he stands in the pocket. He's willing to exchange way too fast. But we've seen, if Teo's not up for this, we've seen what can happen, a la Sandor Martin. Let me know in the comment section what you think about this. I think this is something is something brewing right here. And I think that Keyshawn Davis has an obsession with Teofimo Lopez, and I think we're going to find out who's predator and who's prey soon, and very soon. Anyways, thanks for tuning in here at BodyWorkBoxing. But we don't take things for face value. We do that body work.